Hi everyone, today we're going to do 5.3 day 2 notes. In 5.3 day 1 notes, we learned synthetic division. So we're going to go ahead, we are going to review that skill one more time. So we're going to divide some polynomials. When we did synthetic division, we had to go ahead, we had to make a box and an equal sign. And we needed to figure out what number would we put in the box. And so that's going to come from this g of x function. And so to go ahead and to find that number, we're going to set the factor equal to 0. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to add 2 to both sides. And then we're going to get x equals 2. And that's going to be what we put in the box to do our division. Our next step was to go ahead and to write down the coefficients of all the terms in the polynomial for f of x. And so we want to make sure that we have arranged these coefficients by the term degree. So we want to put the coefficient of the largest degree first and then go in descending order. So we're looking at these numbers in front. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to see if there's no number in there that's like that's a 1. So we have 1, 4, -4, -16. Now in synthetic division, our first step is to go ahead and to drop down the first coefficient, so 1. And then just to review, whenever we do any operations with a number that was in the box, we're going to do multiplication. So we have 1 times 2 is 2. I put that in the next blank. And then whenever we do any operations within a column, we're going to add. So 4 plus 2 is 6. And we're going to keep repeating this process. It's kind of like a pattern once you get the hang of it. 6 times 2 is 12. -4 plus 12 is 8. 8 times 2 is 16. -16 plus 16 is 0. And when we have 0, that means there's no remainder. That means that x minus 2 divided into my polynomial f of x evenly. And the final step is to go ahead and to write this answer. And so we're going to always start 1 degree less than the highest degree in f of x. So 1 degree less than to the third is to the second. So this becomes 1x squared. And we're just going to keep decreasing the power on that variable term by 1. So 1x squared plus 6x plus 8. And that's your final answer. Okay, let's try number 2. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to repeat the same process again. We're going to make our box, make our equal sign. We need to figure out what number to put in the box, and we look at g of x for that. So we're going to set that factor equal to 0. We're going to subtract 2 from both sides, and then we're going to get x equals -2. And so that's going to go ahead and be what we put inside this box. And then we need to write down the coefficients of all the terms. And so we're going to look at 1, -5, -4, and 20. And so we're going to rewrite those. So 1, -5, -4, 20. The next step is to go ahead and drop down that first term. And then we're going to start to multiply and add. 1 times -2 is -2. -5 plus -2 is -7. -7 times -2 is +14. -4 plus 14 is 10. 10 times -2 is -20. And then 20 plus -20 is 0. And once again, we don't have a remainder. So now we just got to rewrite this answer. We're going to start 1 degree less than what was in that f of x function. So it would be 1, and then it was to the third power is my highest degree. So 1 less is x to the second minus 7x plus 10. Now let's go ahead, let's do one more together, and then we'll have you try one on your own. So let's look at number 3. We're going to go ahead, we're going to make that box. We're going to use g of x to determine what goes in the box. So we have x minus 1 equals 0. We're going to add 1, we're going to add 1. We're we're going to get x equals 1. Then we need to go ahead and write the coefficients of the terms down. So we have 2, -3, -2, 3. Make that equal sign. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to drop down the first term, which is 2. So we have 2 times 1 is 2. -3 plus 2 is -1. -1 times 1 is -1. -2 plus -1 is -3. -3 times 1 is -3. 0 plus -3 is 0. And we're going to go ahead and see that once again we have no remainder. The final step is going to be to write down my answer. So I'm going to start 1 degree less into the third. So we have 2x squared minus x minus 3. Okay, so now that we've done 3 together, why don't you go ahead, take a minute, pause the video, and try to do problem number 4 on your own. So if you look here, I went ahead and wrote the answer to number 4. Your final answer should have been x squared plus 3x minus 18 with no remainder. So we're going to skip number 5 and we're going to move on to problem number 6. So what I like about problem number 6 is that we're going to see an example of what it looks like when we do have a remainder and how we write that down in our final answer. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to make our box, put our line. We're going to use that function g of x to figure out what goes into the box. If you don't want to go ahead and show me the math to solve for x, we know that this -1 is just going to switch signs. So it would be x equals 1. You can do that. That's okay. And so we know that 1 would go into that box. And now we're just going to go ahead and write down all the coefficients. So we'll have 2, 9, 4, -13. We're going to drop down that 2. 2 times 1 is 2. 9 plus 2 is 11. 11 times 1 is 11. 4 plus 11 is 15. 15 times 1 is 15. -13 plus 15 is 2. We're going to go ahead, we're going to start 1 degree less into the third power when we write our final answer. And we're going to go ahead and we are going to see that it would be 2x squared plus 11x plus 15. And then we're going to write this in remainder. So we're going to do plus 2 over whatever that g of x function was, x minus 1. And that would be your final answer. The next part of the video is going to be review skills. So one will be factor by grouping, and the other one will be solving by grouping. If you feel comfortable with both of these skills, then go ahead and move on to the practice for today. If you don't feel comfortable, I'm going to go ahead and work through a few examples of each of these. So when we're going to go ahead and factor by grouping, we always need 4 terms, and we got them. So we're going to start by grouping them together, and then we're going to look in each pair and pull out the GCF. So my GCF of 6x to the third and 7x, that would just be x squared. So I'm going to divide both pieces by x squared. The greatest common factor is going to drop down in front. And then I'm going to go ahead and simplify. So 6x to the third divided by x squared is just 6x. Negative 7x squared divided by x squared is negative 7. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to look at my GCF of the other pair. And remember that if that first term is negative, then I want to go ahead and pull out a negative GCF. So I'm going to see 42x and 9. That would be negative 7. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drop this down in front. Negative 42x divided by negative 7 is 6x. 49 divided by negative 7 is negative 7. And remember the check for this, if you know that you did it right, what's left over in the parentheses after you pull out the GCF, that should be the same. And it is here, so that means we went ahead and we solved this correctly. Your next step is going to be to combine those GCFs into one factor, so x squared minus 7, and then go ahead and rewrite the factor that is repeated, whatever's left over in the parentheses, one time. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to work through one more here. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to group in number 9, group these two together. My GCF for 40x to the third and 16x squared is going to go ahead and be 8x squared. (40x to the third divided by 8x squared is 5x. Negative 16x squared divided by 8x squared is negative 8. And now I need to go ahead and figure out my GCF for the second pair. So 15x and negative 6, my GCF for that will be 3. But if I go ahead and I look here at this, I'm just going to go ahead, I see I made a mistake. Negative 16x squared divided by 8x squared is 2 and not 8. But then when I'm going to still go ahead and pull out my GCF of 3. I'm going to drop that down in front. And before I even go ahead and divide out that GCF, I should be getting 5x minus 2. If that's not what's left over in that parenthesis, then I've done something wrong. So 15x divided by 3 is 5x. And then negative 6 divided by 3 is negative 2. And I can go ahead and see that once again I have factored correctly. My two GCFs are going to become one pair. And then that piece that's left over becomes my other factor pair. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to do just one example. Here I'm going to do number 7. Here we're solving by grouping. And so it's going to start out the same way as when we factored. We're going to go ahead and factor and group them. My GCF of 3x cubed and negative 7x squared is x squared. I'm going to drop that down in front. I'm going to get 3x minus 7. And then my GCF of negative 27 and 63 would be negative 9. We're going to drop that down in front. Negative 27 divided by 9 is 3x. 63 divided by negative 9 is negative 7. Equals 0. I'm going to see, yes, we've done it correctly because what's left over in the parentheses matches. And then one pair would be x squared minus 9. The other one will be 3x minus 7 equals 0. Now what makes this different than factoring is that I'm going to take it one step further. And I got to set each of these factors equal to 0 and solve. That's why we're solving by grouping. So we have x squared minus 9 equals 0. And then we have 3x minus 7 equals 0. And we're going to go ahead then and solve each of these. So for this equation on the left, I'm going to add 9 to both sides. I'm going to get x squared equals 9. I'm going to take the square root of both sides. I'm going to get x equals, remember, whenever I take a square root, I need a plus or minus, 3. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to add 7. I'm going to get 3x equals 7. And then we're going to divide by 3. Now 3 cannot divide into 7 evenly, so I'm just going to leave that like a fraction. So we're going to leave that as 7 over 3. And then the final step will be to throw it into a solution set. If you'd like to see another example of either factor by grouping or solving by grouping, go ahead and look at the keys that will be posted to Google Classroom so you could see the other examples worked out.